Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're Masechtas Yevamot Daf Samech. We are going to begin on Nun Tes Amud Beis by the Tanur Rabbanan, about 7 lines from the bottom. Tanur Rabbanan. Anusas Atzma Mafutas Atzma, which is referring to the Kohen Gadol himself as Ma'anis or Mafata, a woman. So the question is, will he now be allowed to marry her? Because, of course, she's no longer a Basula because of his own doing. So Lo Yisa, so he's technically not allowed to marry her, the Kohen Gadol, because he's supposed to take a Basula. However, Im Nasa Nasui, but if he married her, he married her. Or Nusas Chavero, let's say it was a Nusas Chavero, Mafutas Chavero, someone else was Ma'anas Mafata, this woman, of course she's a Bu'ula, so Lo Yisa, again, the Kohen Gadol should not marry, but Im Nasa Hirem Machol, because Rabbi Lezer Yain Kavaimer, Havalad Chol, Chachomim, Havalad Kosher. Okay. Now, Im Nasa Nasui, so Omarab Huna, Omarab, Umaytz beget. Even though this Kohen Gadol, who's Ma'anis Mafata her, so he said that if he would marry her, it was actually a valid marriage. However, we're not going to allow him to remain in this sinful relationship, and therefore he has to give her a get. What does it mean? It sounds like he can remain married. So Rav Achabar Yaakov Loimer, it's come to tell us, we continue to Samach Amud Aleph, Shin Misham Kinas B'Mafuta. It doesn't mean he can remain married, but says Rashi, She'im Mafuta hi ahani le nesuin lafturi mekanasa. Shemafata in Misham Kinas el kishein koinsa. The only time you have to pay for Oinis Mafata is dafka in a situation where you don't marry her, and the Torah requires you're supposed to marry her. So, in this situation, it's considered to be enough of a marriage, not that he can remain married, this Kohen Gadol, but at least it's enough that it's chal that he doesn't have to pay for the damage, for the penalties. Also, Rav Gavia Mebiksil, Amr Lishmaisel Kamei Ravash, he said this over to him. So, Malay, Rav Yochanan and Tavayu, they both said Boigeres. When it comes to Boigeres, Inumukas 8, Lo Yisa, Kohen Gadol is not supposed to marry these women. However, Im Nasa Nasoi. However, if he did marry them, then it's a good marriage. Alma, Sofolios Boigeres, Tachtov. Sofolios Mukas 8 Tachtov. So at the end, she's going to end up being a Bogeres underneath him, or a Mukas 8, says Rashi, Kalimer, Sofoli Boyolo, Abib Suleha. She's eventually going to end up having Tashras there, and she's going to lose her Basulim. So that's the case. Hachanami Sofolios Ba'ula Tachto, says Rashi, Dim Nasa Nasoi, the Katani Ligami Kaimer, the Motel Kaimel, her should mean that he's able to keep her kasha. There's a question again exactly how you understand this, but again the Gemara does say that the Kohen Gadol would have to divorce her. Anusas Chaver Mafutas Chaver Yisavim Nasser Belezer and Yaakov Omer Havlad Chol V'Chol Omer Havlad Kosher. So again, this Kohen Gadol, the question is, what is the din if someone else was honest or mafata her, and then he marries her? Is that a valid marriage? So it's a machlokas, and therefore the din is whether this child will be a chol or a kosher. So Rav Huna Rav halacha Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. The halach, in fact, is like the shita of Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov that says the child will be a chol. The chena Rav Gidol Rav halacha Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. Some say Rav Huna Rav my time with Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. Why does Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Taka say this? So Rabbi Lezer, because he holds like the sheet of Rabbi Lezer. Let's go right in Rashi. We're going to see later on Daf Samach Aleph in tomorrow's Daf that Panui Haba Panui Shulashim Ishus Asa Zainu. Actually, we saw this in yesterday's Daf as well. That even in a situation where it's a single man with a single woman who has Tashva Shulashim Ishus, that makes her into a Zaina. The Kaima Olei Belav, that's considered a lav, and Machavi Lav and the Kahuna Havi Havlad Chol. When we're dealing with Chavi Lavin, the product of that relationship will be a chol. So that's the reason why Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov says that when it comes to Oinis Chaver, Mafutas Chavero, that the child's going to be a chol, because this is a situation where she'll be considered like a zaina. Even, again, if it's a panoi to a panuya, that would be the din. So the question is, he really hold like the sheet of Rabbi Lezer? But Kaimelon Mishnas Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Kabanaki. We know that Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, it makes sense that we decide to paskin him because we generally say that his learnings and rulings are very precise and clean. But we end up saying that the halacha is not like Rebbe Lazar regarding a panui habal panuya. So l'chayra kasha, it's difficult to understand how he could possibly hold like someone when we generally hold Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov's svar is very clean, then we always paskin like him and whatever he holds like. So if in fact he holds like Rebbe Eliezer, it's hard to understand because we don't hold like Rebbe Eliezer. Rav Ashi Omer b'yesh chol mechavi asei k'meflagi. The question is, can the product of a relationship, which is not even a chavi lavin but a chavi asei, can that produce a chol? So what's the case of a chavi asei? So our case of an almana, rather when it comes to a kohen gadol with a woman who is a non-basula. So the Torah says he's supposed to take a basula. Now if he doesn't, that means that he's violated a mitzvah saseh. So the question is, by him taking a woman who is a ba'ula, is that considered, that's a lav haba b'chlal aseh, which we say is an aseh. So says the Gemara, so that's the machlokas. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov savar yish chol b'chavi aseh, that even when it comes to this relationship, that he took a non-basula, so that child will be a chol. Rabbanan savar in chol b'chavi aseh. You're not going to be a chol through a chavi aseh, only through a chavi lavin, etc. So my time of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So how do we see and why does he see that in fact you're going to be chayiv, even by chavi aseh, when the woman is a non-basula, that if the kohen gadol would take her, that the child's a chol? It's based on the pasuk. Almana gerush v'chlol zoynes elo yikach. So the pasuk says, who is the kohen not allowed to take? A widow, divorced, or cholol, zoyna. These are the women he may not take. Es ela, these. Now, ki'im basula, he only can take a woman who's a basula. Uksiv, and it also says, v'yichal zaroi ba'amov, that he's not allowed to make his children to chalolim. So according to him, it's akuhu. It's going on this entire pasuk. It's going on the case of almana grusha chalol zaina, and also on the case of ki'im basula, that he has to take a basula, and therefore, even though it's, we can deduce lav haba b'chlal aseh is an aseh, and therefore you'd be making the child into a chol there too. For Rabbanan, eila hifsek inyan. No, the word es eila yikach is telling that those situations which are chavi lavin will the child become a chol. However, not if it's a non-basula. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Omer eila, when it says eila, it's not a hefsek, but it's lamuti nida. It's coming to exclude a nida. Says Rashi, she'im ba koyin al ishto nida in a vlad chol. That even though one's not allowed to have tashmish, it's an isikares with your wife who's a nida, but if you would do so and have a child, that child will not be considered to be a chol. Kamana zohodesanya. Who's this following statement like? Me'ela, when it says me'ela ato is a chol. The ato asa chol menida. You can make a chol only out of these cases, but not of a nida. Come on, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov nichteve le'ela le'b'saif. The question is, l'chara, it makes more sense. It should say le'ela at the end of the pasuk. If it's really coming to include a non-basula, kasha. You're right. The language it should probably have it at the end because it does sound like it's making a hifsek inyan. Okay. All right. With that said, let's start off with a question. When it says as eile, what is that coming to exclude? So either chavi aseh, for example, a ba'ula, or a nida. That was question 7. So certainly a nida is the child will not be a chol, but also chavi aseh. Okay, weiter. Tanaban, achoso. So when it comes to a kohen, he's not allowed to become tameh to whoever he wants. He can only become tameh to his closest relatives, and one of them is a choso, his sister. But it depends on the status of his sister. What's the din if a rusa, says Rashi, shel kohen hedget, that she is married to a kohen hedget, a regular kohen. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer matamila. The kohen could become tameh for her if she dies at that state. Rav Yossi, Rav Shimon, Oimrim, Ein Matamala. So this is just Pashit. You didn't actually. This is your what? This is Achai Sarusa Shel Koin Hedget. Avon Nesua Pshitul and the Ein Matama. Dechsev Achai So Habasula. So you're only allowed to become tummy to your sister if she is not if she's let's say a Panuya, or she's a Basula. However, at the time when she's fully married, at that point, no longer allowed to become tummy to your sister. But it's a machlokus when it comes to Bishas Erison. Anusa mafuta divrei ein matamula. If she was someone was oinis mafata, his sister, so everyone holds he cannot become tamei. And the Gemara is going to explain the reason later on for this. Umukas eitz, also when it comes to mukas eitz in matamula divrei Rav Shimon. So this is actually we're going to say is a machlokus that when it comes to mukas eitz, even though the truth is. She didn't. No one did anything physically with her, but because she lost a basulim through it, she's going to be usher to a kohen gadol. So we see that lav b'chlal basulahi, that she's no longer considered to be a basula because she did physically lose her basulim. So according to him, also if his sister was a mukas eitz, and that's how she became that's how she lost her basulim. Also, you cannot become tummy for her as well. Fine. Mukas eitz in matamula. They Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon Omer ruil kohen gadol matamula. Shenuil kohen gadol ein matamula. So only someone who's fit to marry kohen gadol. In other words, if his sister was a basula, then the kohen could become tummy for her, for his sister. However, if it's a mukas eitz, because the kohen gadol is not allowed to marry a mukas eitz, so he's also a regular kohen cannot become tummy for his sister who's a mukas eitz. Ubogeres matamula. He says when it comes to if she's a bogeres, he could become matama for her. And again, we're talking about a situation where she's still a basula. Divri kol adam. That's according to everyone. So my Talmud Rav Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, the Darshi Hachi makes the following drasha. So Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda says that when it comes to an arusa, if she only had an erison, he can still become tummy for his sister. So achaisa habasula, so pratla nusa mafuta, which everyone holds that. If someone was ma'anis or mafata, his sister, now the kohen cannot become tummy for her. Yachol shani moitzi avmukas eitz. Maybe I'll exclude that also. Talmud lo yamar lo haisa leish mishahav yasa al yedeish. Someone who lost a basulim because of a man through tashmish shatza zu by mukas eitz shin havyasa al yedeish. So again, according to this opinion. You would be able to come tamei for your sister who was a mukas eitz. Hakroiva, what is the one out for him? Ramas arusa, that includes erison. Fine. And Rashi says v'itzrach riboy. We need this riboy. To lo tema ashos lo haisa prat la arusa shaisa leish. Okay. Elu v'rabas habogeres. So that includes a bogeres. So halam likra v'yam rameir basula feel makes us basula mashma. When it says basula, it's mashma even if she has some of her basulim. So l'chayra that should be enough to know when it comes to a case of let's say a mukas eitz that it's going to be fine. And maybe she didn't lose all her basulim there. So it's or when it comes to a bogeres. Right? So even though maybe she lost some of her basulim, as we saw in yesterday's daf, but she still has mixas basula. So it's amina nel basul mahasamal hola naira avkan nami naira kamashmon. Maybe it's davka, she has to be a naira, but when she's a bogeres, no. So in this, no, even if she's a bogeres and she still is a basula, but she only has mixas basulim, we still say that the kohen can become tamei for her. Now, Yosef Shimon my tamayu. So why do they say that he cannot become tummy for his sister who's an arusa? So darshi hachi v'lachaisa basula pralanusa mafut. Everyone agrees to that. Mukas eitz, what mukas eitz? Also mukas eitz, no. So again, it's a machlokas by mukas eitz. Ashul haisa prat larusa. So it's a machlokas. Also, as we see here, when it comes to an arusa. So by your sister who was an arusa. Just writing this down, also is a machlokas. Okay. Hakroiva, L'Rabba Sarusa Shinis Garsha. It's coming to include if, let's say, it was Erison and she got divorced, so then she died, so we allow you in that situation. Okay. Now, Eilav is a Rabba says about Geras. Again, even though she has mixus besul. Hakroiva Rabba Sarusa is Garsha. So we said 1 second. You're telling me if she was an Orus and she got divorced and then she died, then you're allowed to become tummy for her? Says the Gemara in Daf Samach Hamad Beis, Ha'omer of Shimon, Royal Kohen Gadol Matamala, Shin Royal Kohen Gadol in Matamala. When she's Gerusha, she can't marry Kohen Gadol, she can't even marry a regular Kohen. Certainly can't marry Kohen Gadol, so then why would we allow it? The answer is you're right. Shani Hasav Rabbi Rachman Kraiva. So she's close again. In other words, it's true that there is this drasha, but the reality is because there's this extra word that of the Shani Hasav the Rabbi Rachman Kraiva. Because it says this drasha, this extra word, we allow once she became divorced that he's like close to his sister again, if you will, and therefore he's allowed to become tummy for her. Hihachi mukaseitz nami, Rabbi. Why don't we include that also by mukaseitz? Kroiva achas v'lo shnayim. There's only going to be talking about one element of coming close and not two. So marisa. So why would you include mukaseitz, but not rather? Why would we include the case of Gerushin, but not the case of Mukas Eitz, that you can't become tummy for Mukas Eitz? So Savid B'Maisa. By Mukas Eitz, a physical action happened to her. Savid B'Maisa. She got divorced, but Shas Erison, nothing happened, there was no action, so therefore you're allowed to become tummy for her. Rabbi Yosi Midishavki Labar Zuge, the fact that he left this pair, Mechlal de Mukas Eitz Karamer Svirle. He must hold like the shita of Rameir when it comes to Mukas Eitz. So Minole, Milo Haisel Ish. He learned that from Milo Haisel Ish, that she was not with a man. Ibo Afik, we used that before. No Chad, Milo Haisa. Chad, Milo Ish. So you can actually split into two different drashas. Eilav Rabos Abageris. Abba Omer Shimon Basula Shlema Mashma. He holds it, she has to be a Basula Shlema. And a Bulgaris lost just by the fact that she's a little bit older some of her Basulim. So Taima Didei Nami Hasamahacha. Actually, our reason is from here. The Darsh Hachi. Mid'ela Vorabas Bulgaris. The fact that you need a pasuk to include the Bulgaris, you can become tummy for her. Mechlal de Basula Shlema Mashma. It's mashma that otherwise she's it has to be a complete Basula. Again, the fact that we have this drasha is to include her is because otherwise, if it was mixas basulim, you wouldn't need this drasha to tell you about Bulgaris. The fact that we need a riboy for Bulgaris is obviously a raya that otherwise it wouldn't work. Tanya Rav, he wouldn't become tummy for her. Tanya Rav Shimon bar ben Yochai Omer Gioris pchus mebashol shav yom echad. So what if you have a girl who's less than 3 years old? So we say that even though she's a convert, but since she's less than 3 years old, ksher l'kahuna, we would allow her to be able to marry a Kohen. Any child, female child that didn't know or have any tashmish, or even if you have tashmish, pakas b'bashol shanim is nothing. It's not considered to be a bia. You keep them alive. Now Pinchas, who was a Kohen, was one of them, was with them. So it must be, it's coming to tell you that if you have a child who's under 3 years old, she's fit to go even to a Kohen. It just means not to marry them, but you can keep them as slaves. So if that's the case, if there's no bia, so l'chayra it should be even after 3 years old. Why less than 3? Can Rav Huna Rami? He has to steer. On one hand, the pasuk says, "Kol isha yodas isha mishkav zachar haroigo." Any man who knows mishkav zachar has to be killed. Ha'en yodas kaima, which is mashma pretty clearly that if she had not known a man, then she could stay alive. Mechlal the hataf, when it comes to children, bin yodu bin lo yodu kaimu, right? So it's saying when it comes to any woman, if she had relations with a man, no, you can't keep her alive anymore. However, as Benos Midian, I believe. However, if Bia did not take place, she can stay alive, mashma, even though she's an adult. Which therefore is a diuk that every taf, even whether yaldu or lo yaldu, doesn't matter. You can always keep. So it's a stira. The pasuk sounds like only because they didn't know, these little kids. But if they did know, they did have tashmish, then you'd have to kill. So Havi Omer baruyali boil custom adaber. It's talking about fit. Says Rashi, Alpha P Shalu Nivula. Even if they didn't have bia, it has to be someone only in the category of someone who's fit to have had bia. Tanya mihachi v'chol ish yodas ish. So what does that mean? Baruyali boil custom adaber. In other words, someone who's already at least 3 years old. Ata Omer baruyali boil inu ella nivula mamish. Someone who actually had bia, and that's the distinction. Now, Kishu Omer b'chol hataf b'nashim ashul yadu mishko zachar havi Omer baruyali boil custom adaber. Fine. So the question is, how did they know whether someone was 3 years old or not? So Amar Rav Huna bar Bizna, Amar Rav Shimon Chasida, Tavir Lifnei Tzitz. They would actually pass these children in front of the tzitz, this golden headband of the Kohen Gadol. Kol sheponem marikois. Anytime their faces like change, which is miraculous, biyadu shehi royally boil, which shows that she was over 3 years old. Kol she'ein ponem marikos, if the face didn't change, biyadu she'ein royally boil. So that's how they were able to know, by using the tzitz. Amar Rav Nachman, similar aveira, a sign for sin, hidroikon, is this ailment, this sickness. That is Rashi Paneim shel over aveira moirikin. Their face turns green. Kiyotz b'davar ata Omer. The pasuk says v'yimsu miyoshvi yavesh gilad arba meyois nara basula. They found in the days of Pelegish Begiva 400 Nairos who were virgins. Actually, Yadu Ish Lemishkov Zachar. The question is, Manayade. How did they know? How did they know that was their status? Some Rav Kahana Hoshivam al pi chavius shel yain. They put him on top of a barrel of wine. Ba'ula reicha noidev. Basula in reicha noidev. Basically, a basula, so the smell, the aroma did not go through her body, but a ba'ula it did. So that's how they tested it. So the question is, why did they take this person and put it on a barrel? Why don't you have them go in front of the tzitz to determine whether or not it was a basur or ba'ula? So Rav Kahana b'reidu Rav Nasan l'ratzos lehem ksiv l'ratzoin lehem ksiv l'ratzon v'loi lepronius. We're only going to use the tzitz for good things, but not for punishments. And therefore, we're not going to determine if she's a basula or ba'ula, and therefore, that way, rather use this barrel trick. So what do you mean? So why don't we do the same thing with midyan? Why by midyan do we allow the tzitz? It's the same problem. So Amar Avashi lehem ksiv lehem l'ratzon l'pranes. For the yidden, again, this was talking about Pilegish Begiva. So for Yisrael, the only time the tzitz is used is l'ratzon and not for punishment. So therefore, we're able to use the tzitz to determine their status. Amr of Yaakov bar Idi, Amr of Yeshua ben Levi, Halacha Reb Lezer, Rav Shimon ben Yochai. Amr Rav Zeir, Rav Yaakov bar Idi, Beferish Shemielach, Umachlal Shemielach. That you said the Halacha of Rav Shimon ben Yochai. So the question is that something which you saw Beferish, namely that we said before, a Gyrus who's less than 3 years old is kosher to a Kohen, or is that only done through deduction? So Gemara says, prepare shemielach or machlol shemielach. So my klol, what would be the deduction? Yom Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi irachas ha'ismeretz yisrael, there's a city shekar aleha aror. There was this rumor against them, and there was this rumor against them. V'shiger Rabbi Romonois ubadko matzaba baskiers pchus mashol sham yom echad. And they found that there was this girl who was less than 3 years old. V'chshira Rabbi l'kahuna, and we see that he allowed her to marry. So Amalei beferish shemili v'i mechlol mai. So what do you mean it was beferish? It sounds like it's pretty clear that we possibly came based on this Masa Shahoya. No, Dilmashani Hasam, Hoyel Insiv. maybe since she was already married, we allow her to stay married. However, not necessarily would we allow this lechatchila situation. We say by bogeres and mukas eitz they should not marry. However, im nisa nasoi. Once they're married, they're married. Over there, several years bogeres tachta, several years bu'ula tachta. We said the reason why we allow him to remain with a kohen gadol with these women is because she's going to become a bu'ula anyway. If you marry a basula, you're going to end up having relations with her. She'll be a bu'ula. So the fact that she's a bogeres or mukas eitz, so it's not the biggest deal because it's going to happen anyway. Hacha sofliyo zona tachtav, says Rashi, bidmia isvirli the psul mishum znus svirle v'im kain loshno lachatchil loshno diavad asira. That in fact the kohen is not allowed to be with a gerush or with a gioras, and the product will be a zona, it shouldn't make any difference. So therefore, that's what you can possibly say. That you can't use this as a raya. Oh, we see by a bogeres or mukas eitz that he can remain married to her. No, maybe not in this case. Okay. Rav Safra mastil b'chlol v'kash l'mashani le. Hachi hahu kahana. There was a kohen the ins of gioras chus mashal shlam yomechad. He actually married her, less than 3 years old. Amalei Rav Nachman and Bar Yitzchak Mayhai. What did he do? So Amalei Yom Rav Yaakov Bar Idi Yom Rav Yeshua ben Levi Halacha Rav Shimon ben Yochai. He was allowed to do it because that's what we passed like. So Amalei Zil Apik. Where do we go out? The Ilo Mapikna Loch Rav Yaakov Bar Idi Mi'unich. You go out of this relationship. If not, I'm going to remove you from the ears. Says Rashi Kalaimer, Mishamtinan loch v'tepik al karchach. I'm going to excommunicate you, and you'll have to leave regardless. Okay, there's more to discuss about this. We'll stop here. It continues on the next daf. Question 8. Kohen gadol she'avar violated v'nasa nashim halolu, and he married these women. So is he mutter to remain married? So mafutas atzmai, if he was mafata himself. So it says Omarab Moitzi V'Solik Bakasha. So he said, you can actually see this over here on this daf. Omarav Umoitzi Beget, even though that it's a little bit shtickle difficult to understand because we thought maybe it meant that he can nasul all is forever. Okay, Bogeres Mukas eitz. So we see over here that when it comes to bogeres and mukas eitz, even though the kohen gadol is not supposed to marry her, right? But if the kohen gadol did marry them, it's okay. And then the last one in question 8 is gieres pchusim bas gimel. So over here it says if it's a gieres pchusim bas gimel, moitzi. In that situation, we just said zil apik. Okay. TA 13. Anusas atzim afutas atzmo yisam yimnasi nosli Indian ma nosli. Regarding what are they considered to be married? So Paship Shat is what we see on the top of Samachamot Aleph, and this is TA 13. That Shein Mishalim Kanas Mafuta. That's Pashut Shot what it means. Let's see if that's all he wants. Yeah. Question TA 14. Matzad Asar Kohen Hedet Lisa Katana. We did not do that. Okay. TB 14. TB 14. Among the Grusha Chalol Zainis Elo Yikach Kim Basula. Es miba kasla mayit patevas ele deloy havichlal achol mebiyasa. So this we did see already, and the answer is either according to one shita, even chaviasei. Now there's marrying a non basula or a nida adkan.